Hello, this is Steve Stallings, and this is a brief demonstration of the Avantiico Freight Invoice Automation ISV module for Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain. In this demonstration, which is the second in a series, I'll be taking you through the importation and processing of carrier invoices, which is a completely automated process, requires no human intervention at all, but I'll walk you through the steps so you can see what's happening in the background. As I mentioned, this is the second in a series of small, short videos. The first one covered freight billing or freight bills and estimates and how those are imported and processed. This one will cover the carrier invoices that come in several days later. And then we'll follow with subsequent videos on how the matching takes place and the reconciliation analysis after these transactions are received. So in this part of the process, we have covered the freight estimating, the freight bill import, and the accrual of the financial data to provide visibility. And now we wait a few days until the carrier invoices start arriving, and then those will ultimately be matched against those freight bills. So this is a typical format for a carrier invoice in ANSI EDI. Now, there are several different formats that we support natively. This one happens to be a DHL invoice, which is an X12 4010 format. The FedEx 4060 is a very similar format, and the UPS 4030 initially looks differently, but it gets automatically converted using their field delimiter values so that it ends up looking like this transaction as well. And then for any carriers that you use in the EU, we also support EDIFACT. Now, most parcel carriers, I should say all parcel carriers, are EDI capable and can send us this kind of data in this native format, their format, and we can ingest this without any translation or value-added network providers to add cost and complicate that process. Some carriers are not capable of sending EDI transactions, and for those, we still accept CSV, comma separated value files from those carriers. So the processes we're going to look at today are the carrier invoice import, whether it's CSV or the EDI formats, the invoice data that we receive from those carrier invoices. So looking at the invoices themselves, invoice lines, and then the unmatched carrier invoices waiting for matching. And then finally, we'll look at the workspace that a user might use to get at all of this information from one place and not have to learn to navigate around the system. So starting off with carrier invoices as imported, what you see here is a list of 5 carrier invoices that we've imported into the system, whether they came in via CSV files or X12 EDI files. All that information is identified here. The status in the middle of the page that these are mostly just created invoices. One of them is in process, so it's in the process of being matched against freight bills, and all the basic information about what's in these invoices. But this is at the summary level, the header level. So if I drill down on that hyperlink in the left-hand column under invoice, the 857-623-617 invoice, I can drill down into the invoice lines. And here I can see the 10 or 12 lines that are in that invoice. And then since I've highlighted the first line here, you can see at the right that I have not just the invoice lines, but all the details for that invoice line, all of the costs, all the reference fields, all of the service levels, everything that was included in that invoice is included in these invoice line details. So this is very valuable information to have in order to support the matching process. The rub here is that we're only looking at the lines on one invoice, and freight carriers can send you multiple invoices against the same tracking number. And they do. UPS is famous for that. 2, 3 invoices is not uncommon. So we also want a way to look at carrier invoice lines regardless of the invoice they're on. So in this next view, the one that's highlighted now, I'm going to take you into carrier invoice lines. And this is all the invoice lines for a single tracking number across multiple invoices. So what you're seeing here is 3 different invoices with 3 different invoice lines on 3 different dates against the same tracking number. And we can get, again, drill down into all that detail and get to all the charges against this tracking number, regardless of which invoice it came in on. And the reason this is significant is you might, as this one says on 4/1, get an invoice for the basic freight charge for the shipment you made. On 5/20, you got an accessorial fee for maybe a fuel surcharge or something you might have expected in the cost components. And then on 6/2, we got a subsequent invoice that did not match. You notice the status in the middle of the page, the first 2 lines matched. Third one didn't match because it was an unexpected accessorial fee or cost component that was added after the fact. UPS can add these for up to 180 days against the same shipment. So we have to keep that freight bill open for as long as UPS might send us additional invoices against the shipment. It's not a one and done deal. You could match on the first one or the second one and still get subsequent invoices against that same shipment that therefore drive you beyond a match. So this is the detail now for the unmatched carrier invoice lines. These are all the lines that have not been processed yet. They haven't gone through a matching process, and we have access to those here as well. And again, on the left is the list of those unmatched invoice lines, and on the right is all the details about those. And I mentioned cost components a moment ago. If we scroll down on this scroll bar on the far right of the screen, we can get down to that cost component level. So this particular invoice was $11.29 in total, but it's made up of a freight charge, a fuel surcharge, a label fee, and this could be a dozen, 2 dozen more accessorial fees, from residential delivery charges to toll road charges to all kinds of different cost components that can be added to an invoice. So in this case, we have the 3, the freight, the fuel surcharge, and the label fee. All of that information that I just shared with you can be accessed from one place. So even though this process is fully automated and does not require any user intervention at all, if a user would like to follow the process or review any of this data, we have a workspace here that allows them to log into this one location and see the freight bills that we talked about in the previous demo, the carrier invoices we talked about a moment ago, the carrier invoice lines, and get access to all those detail screens right here in one place. From here, they can do further processing, do multiple inquiries, clean up data, etc., if they want to. This is not a required form since this process is fully automated. So that takes us to our summary here. In this demo, we covered the importation and processing of carrier invoices up to the point of doing matching. In the last demo, of course, we were in the section below this, the freight estimates and freight cost components being brought in so that they could be matched. And in the next demo, we'll get into the actual matching process. And in subsequent demos, the reconciliation and analytics processes. That's it for this demo. I hope that you found this information useful. Thank you very much.